Hello and welcome to Sparta Carnegie Township Library. We'd like to share some information about our community library. It is our temple of shared learning, the repository of thousands of years of intellectual inquiry. If knowledge is power, the Sparta Library is our community arsenal, a beehive of educational materials. January 1900 was an exciting time. The dawn of the 20th century brought with it a changing national attitude towards nature, travel, aesthetics, and the creativity of invention was making life easier for the American people. The ladies of Sparta were also enjoying the country's growth as they formed the Ladies' Literary Club. Its first president, Mrs. Gorin Anderson, possessed a philanthropic spirit, and though the club was organized for literary purposes, its formation also conveyed intense interest in civic affairs.
Sparta was one of the early ones, the township, in allowing women to have a say in what was going on in their universe.
At a regular LLC meeting in February 1914, the idea of a reading room was introduced. This centrally located facility would benefit young men who had left their homes in search of employment opportunities. Ensuing discussions found that other communities were supporting the idea of a free public library.
And they wanted to expand and to grow, but they could not afford a building. There was actually no building in Sparta that was suitable for a library. And so they diligently worked away at it.
Susie Wilcox, Minnie Whitney, Della Bradstrom, and Cecile Keister were individuals who pursued this idea, starting with a visit highlighted by a stereopticon lecture from Mrs. Rank of Grand Rapids Ryerson Library. Here a seed was planted, and the enthusiasm from that meeting would not die. The next year a library committee was formed, and a decision was made to seek information from Newaygo, whose village president was seeking funds for a Carnegie library as well. Eventually, Charles Rice, Sparta Township supervisor, corresponded with the Carnegie Foundation for such a grant. A library fund was established. To begin, money raised was used to furnish the donated room in the Holt Jewelry Store, the library's first temporary home. Circulation was 439 books, either purchased or donated. 3 bookcases held the entire circulation. Susie Holt, who offered a room in the jewelry store, was elected as the first librarian. $137 was raised that first year from afternoon teas. Fancy goods and baked goods sales, sale of rubber, and proceeds from the play Red Acre Farm.
Many community-minded people in Sparta that, yes, so that tells me that we're a good, strong, vital part of our community, and that's what we want to be.
Further fundraising efforts included writing 100 letters asking for money or books. Welch Manufacturing Company donated 2 more bookcases, and 95 new books were purchased. Eva Taylor became the LLC's president in 1915, with Cecile Keister as the library committee chair. Esther Vander Hoof and Lillian Smith assisted. Various unusual fundraisers took place during the year, raising $202.44. The club had voted to spend $300 if a suitable lot was found. The second meeting of the year had as speakers a woman from the State Library and a woman from Ryerson Library in Grand Rapids. Petitions were circulated to measure support for a .5 mil tax for a Carnegie library. Previously, the men of the township had given women the right to vote and conduct family business should they have to leave to fight in World War I.
The funny thing about that is that the winds of war of World War I were flying. The Archduke in Austria was assassinated, and everybody was worried about what was going to happen. So the men in Sparta voted to let their womenfolk vote for them to protect their interests if they had to go off to war.
Indeed, the women of Sparta Township did register and were allowed to vote for the library millage, and the measure passed.
Wyoming was the first state that allowed women to vote. And everybody was up and coming. They wanted to know more about how this was going. And here the folks in Sparta Township, the women folk, had the right to vote. And if they owned property, they, even if it was not a farm or anything, they could vote. And any of the men that were left behind could as well. Well, the support for the library passed unanimously. They had the village, the head of the village was the first to apply for the Andrew Carnegie Foundation grant, but was turned down because they had to have more support from the township people. They went out and included the entire township, and it had to come from the township supervisor, and everybody voted to say yes, and it was granted.
Bolstered by this show of support, the Carnegie Foundation granted $10,000 to Sparta Township for a public library building. In 1916, Cecile Keister, May Bloomer, Agnes Ballard, and Esther Vander Hoof worked to raise money pledged for a lot. In September, land was purchased from the Olmsteds and the Union Street site was established. Note that Olmsted Street is 50 yards north of our library. Osgood and Osgood architects drew up building plans in November. May of 1917 marked the date the building contract was awarded to John Weber, Contractor and Builders of Grand Rapids. It was also around this time that the LLC, their work completed, ceased to exist.
The pushers, the doers, they've been active since probably 1918, right through to the turn of the 21st century. And they've done many wonderful projects for the library, many upgrades, kept the books coming in regularly. The Friends were the main support of the library through these years.
Their efforts and monies were turned over to the Sparta Township Library. An addition was built in 1960. An interesting feature of the room was that it was designed around one maple tree, planted by longtime school superintendent O.E. Balliot and his wife. The designer, Kenneth Welch, was born in Sparta. His wife decorated the room. Local builder Ralph Taylor & Son was the contractor, while Dick Siegel put in the heating and Stanley Helmer did the electrical work. Total cost was $6,854. Master of Ceremonies George Bettis unveiled a commemorative tablet worded, "The Mrs. E. Phil Bradstrom Children's Room," honoring her for her abiding interest in the library from the very beginning and her 35 years of service.
We have the 1983 edition where this community center was put on here for the use of the community, and many upgrades were done then, including the atrium, which we so enjoy, the light-filled windows that bring the lights in, and more storage space for our books.
The other milestone we had, I think about 2 years ago, we restored the original basement in the original part of the library that was built in 1917. It used to be a lecture room, and back when it was first built, and then over the years it got turned into a storage room where we kept all of our old books, and it was just this old, musty, rundown room that wasn't used. So we were able to get a grant, and most of that money paid for the renovation of that room, and now it's a beautiful. We use it as another meeting room. There's a bathroom down there, a little kitchenette. It's handicap accessible. So we're really excited about that too, that we could provide that for our community's use. I believe the Sparta community, there's many, many great people in this community, and we would not have been this far along in our library services and being a library without the support of the people of Sparta. So I do believe that they recognize the importance of having a library. They recognize the value that we can provide to the community. So yes, I do believe that. I always wanted to work at the library, and I started out as a page, and went from there to children's librarian, and then went to library director. So I've been library director about 16 years.
Okay. I started here November 16th of 1978 as a page, a library page. I was 16. And first day on the job was very scary for me. But little did I know I would be here 39 years later.
I do remember that the library at that time was a very quiet place. Mrs. Anderson made it like that. There was a lot of shush when we came in, and it would just be as quiet as could be. We could hardly even discuss what book we were going to take. My next door neighbor was Dorothy Fitzner, and we would come down to the library, starting about 4th grade, I think. We would come down to the library, especially in the summer, and take out as many books as Mrs. Anderson would let us take out, which it seems to me maybe it was 5 you could check out.
Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb.
I have lived in the village for 3 years now. My husband and I moved here when we started our family. And I started coming to the library actually because I knew one of the librarians. I have known her since I was a little kid. So I decided that I was going to bring my children here. And when I first started bringing them here, it was a very small, intimate story time. But then it's kind of developed into something really, really impressive. Like just they got a new teacher, and she does some amazing things with the kids, and it's very organized, and she's always doing things that are challenging them and that are making them think and learn and using their colors and their numbers, and Miss Nicole is really great.
Along comes a hen, a red ruffled hen. Here we go again.
Our children's programming is a big plus here. We put on a big, our big program is in the summer reading, where we have programming and we give out prizes. Kids read, and we just do a lot of fun things. But throughout the year, we do have story times. We used to just have one story time session, but now it's grown to where we have to have 2, and we average between 10 and 12 kids in each session. And our youth librarian, Nicole, is doing a wonderful job.
Can you imagine taking home an elephant for a pet? Where would we put it?
We start with them very young. We get them excited about reading. We get parents excited about reading with their kids. So it's not something that you wait until they're able to sit still. You start very young, introduce them to the library, and it just kind of becomes part of their lifestyle. At this point, we have about 230 kids already signed up in about a week and a half, so it's been very popular. And it's been fun watching them come back in and get new books and enjoy our programs. Oh, I love reading even as a child. I loved to pretend that I was a librarian. Who knew that this would turn into a job? But I love showing the kids what new books are out there. If they tell me they don't like to read, finding something that excites them and get them reading. It's definitely a place where they can come and they can be entertained, but it's also a great resource of many, many different books for them to share, bring home, read to their kids. It's also great for the computers, so they can do schoolwork or look for jobs, or it's just a great resource in our community.
Many of our patrons who don't have computer services, they don't have their own computer, or if they have their computer, they don't have a printer, so they come to use our computers at the library. And we have many people that use it for that, for job hunting, research, basically Facebook. They like to come and use the social media. We have kids that come and use it for reports because they're learning how to do that in school. So, and if they don't have a computer at home, then they come here.
I come here for the great books that I check out, and I recently got my library card.
Some of the patrons here, I've seen them grow up as children, and then now they bring their families. Some of them bring their grandchildren. They always remember me. And my heart is into it.
Nice place to hang out, get out of the house for some peace and quiet, and discover some new things, because browsing the bookshelf, you'll just find different stuff every time that when you're on the internet it's a little more curated and narrow, even though it's a vast sea of information. You usually look at the same stuff all the time.
The most valuable stamp is a 1-cent British Guyana magenta colored. It was printed the wrong color. That stamp is currently in the Smithsonian Institute on display. Fortunately, I got to see it last year. The stamp was recently purchased by a clothes designer who isn't a stamp collector, but he bought it as an investment for approximately $10 million.
We intend to grow that way to provide more services. We currently have Ancestry. We bought that about 2 years ago, I think, and that's being used, or people can come in and they can research their ancestors for free.
I find a lot of interesting books on subjects I'm interested in, of course, filmmaking and music and such. But, if I feel like exploring something new, I can always step on over to the true crime section, or maybe the romantic paperbacks. They're just a few steps away. Oh, absolutely. There's tons of inspiration at the library. And if the books aren't enough, there's always the local characters.
I also enjoy libraries. When we moved back here, that's how I really became involved.
I love this library. It being my hometown library, it's my roots.
It was such a destination, and there would be a lot of children here.
So many wonderful people. Sparta's just a great place to be. It's a great place. We raised our kids here. It's a great place. The schools are awesome. The teachers are awesome. And all of us, all of us enjoy our jobs. All of us enjoy our jobs.
Sparta Carnegie Township Library, what would you like to learn today?